After what seems like an eternity, this is the brand new and improved Cash Cast. I am your host, Cash Cash, and I am officially a college graduate, and I am very happy to report that. With me, I have a brand new guest, and who are you, random person?
Yes, I am here all the way from the planet of Mobius. Wyatt, it's me, Wyatt Phillips, aka Wasp Ranger, on Twitter.com, and It's Only Magic on YouTube.com, and we're here to talk about some nerdy crap.
And that is just always one of my favorite pastimes. It has been, I have wanted to really just like geek out with someone for such a long time. And honestly, I think you just made like perfect timing because of the fact that so much has happened. We could go either or because of the fact these two topics have overlap. But for the sake of it, since you referenced movies first, let us just talk about the song space at the moment. Now, for anyone who might not be in the know, recently we had a Sonic Central, something I did stream on my channel. Wink, wink. But at the same time, basically everyone else streamed on their channel. So, oh well.
Yeah.
But the Sonic Central was a 12-minute Nintendo Direct-esque thing where we had a bunch of announcements. And overall, I would say that these announcements were pretty good. But I still kind of felt a bit empty. So
yeah, a little left cold, high and dry by the announcements. So yeah, do you want to bring them up one by one, and we can kind of talk about our feelings on them, and then use that as like a pad to jump off of, so to speak.
Yeah, a lily pad. Wink, wink.
To discuss the series and how we feel about it, like currently and in the past, and all of that.
Oh yes, for sure. Now I'm probably gonna look up an article, but just to go off of my memory, and again, feel free to tell me if I miss anything. One of the key things that I remember from the Sonic Central was the fact that we had gotten Sonic the Fighters coming in, I think.
Yes.
Yakuza Lost Judgment.
Yes.
Which, like, I will admit, I want to get into Yakuza real bad. I know a friend gave me Yakuza 0, but it crashed my last computer, so I'm kind of hesitant.
Yeah, Yakuza 0 is really, really fucking good. So if you ever get the chance to like dig like 60 hours into a game, it's really long too, but it's like you will be in tears from like accomplishment as well as just like emotional tears at the end. I promise you, it is worth it. But
okay.
But I've never played Judgment though. I've not played that one yet. But all the Yakuza games, including the Hokuto no Ken one, have arcade games, Sega arcade games in them. So,
and that's literally like, as like a Sega fan, like that's just literally why I've gravitated towards so much. Like, I'll just say, not to get off track, but I was just so surprised and so glad we even got Visit the North Star to come stateside.
Yeah,
because like it's like one of those things where it's not like super unheard of niche, but niche is in like it already has like a set fan base, but no new material to like bring it in. You know, like to like more accessible. Not to say that, you know, it's like bad to make things more accessible, but it's like it's not getting a huge amount of new blood. You know what I mean? It's just like just for the people who are in the know. And that's good. It's very good. But I remember I was talking to one of my college friends, Jace, about this, and I was like, I would love to just like have some more obscure song titles playable in the modern day. And I remember we specifically were talking about Sonic the Fighters because like I know for a fact that it was only we had it on Gems Collection, which added Honey the Cat, and we also had I think like the early 2010s XBLA release, which I'm sorry, but I'm still mad that it just never came to PC because when I had a much better laptop, I was able to play it on the PS3 emulator, and it just worked so well. I had so much fun with my college anime club. But at the very least, people are able to play it and maybe respect it a bit more. And who says it won't get unlocked? Because I think I heard that Virtua Fighter 5, not the remaster is coming, but I think like an older version was just like a flat unlockable in another Yakuza game. And then I checked that, and then a couple days later, people were like, "Oh yeah, we like unlocked the whole thing, so you can go nuts. You literally have like another game." Man, I love PC modders.
So how do you feel about like Sonic the Fighters? Because I know some people consider it like oh, that's a weird, bad, janky fighting game. But as a fan of like weird, janky Saturn fighting games, I really like Sonic the Fighters.
Yeah. I guess like for me in particular, I know it's surprising for someone of my age to say this because like there is a growing discontent with classic Sonic iconography, but I'll still say like I heavily admire and really dig Sonic the Fighters because I just feel like I just like that experimental phase, you know? Like I still think Fire's Megamix is just fucking insane.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yes. Of course so you didn't get yeah. And the fact that it's like a solid fighter. And that's why I don't think a lot of people like respect Sonic the Fighters. Because like I don't think like there's like a certain level of like accessibility. You know, like it's a bit more simplified. But like there are like games that are more simplified that people are able to get like a huge amount of depth. Like my melee bias aside, I remember at first people apparently didn't really dig Marvel 2 because of its more simplified controls.
Yeah.
But then look at how insane people are able to press that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For sure. I think like simplicity is a good way to breed, you know, like intimacy sort of. Whereas like something that's very complex, you can get to that point and love it intimately, but it takes a lot of effort. Whereas like the simplicity, you know, low barrier, and then the relatively high ceiling because of how far you can take it, like that kind of thing. You know, it's why Tetris is really popular. But even just then, like beyond like how it functions as a game, which I think is still pretty fun, I like it aesthetically. I just really love the low poly aesthetic. Like it has the Virtua Fighter 1 and 2 kind of polygons to it, or I guess Fighting Vipers more appropriately, because Honey from Fighting Vipers has her persona in there, which is great. That's that's such an excellent inclusion. They should do that more often. I would love to see like Sonic versions of characters, like, you know, like the main characters from Yakuza.
Oh my God.
You know, put them in there. Like I from Monkey Ball, you know, something like that. Like do more cross promotion with that. Then make it all feel like one big old Sonic Sega family. You know,
oh my God.
Nintendo does a good job.
Oh yeah, of course.
With that, so
like Sega, like definitely has enough properties where if they want to make like a platform fighter, if they wanted to make a like Marvel style fighting game, they absolutely could, and I would be here for that. Like they have the foundation with their racing games, and like All Stars Racing Transformed is one of my favorites. But oh my God,
I mean, if they had like not only do they have the Sega stuff, but they do have Atlas. you know. So they have all of the Shin Megami Tensei, Jesus, Shin Megami Tensei games, as well as Persona, which vaguely counts as well, and then the Etrian Odyssey and other things that Atlus have. So, like, you know, imagine a fucking Smash type game. Now I know that Joker from Persona 5 is already in actual Smash, but you know, bear with me here. A Smash type game that has like those Shin Megami Tensei protagonists and like Rystar and Dynamite Headdy and
oh my god,
Guy from Comics Zone, you know, just all of those things.
I remember when Smash 4 had their fighter ballot. Like I was the one guy who submitted Rystar.
Would have been good.
Yeah. But what was I gonna say? But I think you almost forgot. When we talk about cross promotion, we actually did get the Persona 5 DLC for Sonic Forces.
That's true. That is true. Where the weird they didn't give him gloves for some reason, even though like most Sonic characters already have like the Mickey Mouse gloves, and then Joker has gloves, but for some reason the outfit like removed the gloves from the character. I remember that like really pissing me off, like, you know, 4 years ago. Jesus, at the point,
like, looking at it now, and it's still unsettling because it makes you think questions that you don't need the answers to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you ever wonder why we're always like wearing gloves?
That's weird. But you know, the another announcement that excited me was the Origins collection, not because like, oh man, I need to play these classic games again. But just because in general, I'm a huge proponent of like game preservation. And if it, on one hand, you know, if it really is going to be the headcanon versions of 1, 2, and CD, then that's great to have them on something that isn't iOS. Even though I know CD was on other consoles, but 1 and 2 were not for some reason.
I honestly do not get that, but hilariously, it got to the point where the fans, as usual, said, "Fuck it, we'll do it ourselves," and the Sonic 1 and 2 ports are now basically the Sega equivalent of Doom, where it's on fucking everything.
But
continue.
Like those ports, like having a like official re-release to like preserve them is great, as well as finally having another official release of Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
Yes.
You know, and again, I know that Angel Island Revisited exists. I know that Sonic 3 Complete exists. I know that all these things exist and are like technically better ways to play this game, but it's not the original game the way that it was released, you know. Not
to cut you off, but we did hear rumors, and I know a lot of fans are contentions about rumors from the Zippo guy.
That's true.
But like, I don't know, personally, I wouldn't be surprised if the rumors of having a changed soundtrack were true. Obviously, I would want it to be preserved, but if that's what it takes, then I'll be interested.
Yeah, because unfortunately, like, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is in that position where like it has an absolutely amazing soundtrack to it, and like that is the reason that it was never released on these other things, and not because of Michael Jackson, presumably because of Brad Buxer. So but either way, like getting that game finally working some way to get it released is a nice gesture. Even though like I don't need it, it's good for like kids, you know, the target audience for Sonic, that like they're going to, they don't necessarily have an analog Mega SG and like the original cartridges and are playing it on their HD TV. It's not as easy to play these old games in the original way.
If they know like a nerdy cousin like me who can like set up like his backup laptop in order to play RetroArch, that's not exactly the same thing that they're gonna have when they go home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So it's always good to have those options. And again, like it's all about preserving it in some way and like making these old games available in some way and like showing people that these old games are still worth playing. So yes, I know we have played Sonic 1 1,000 fucking times. But at least we are able to play it. At least they have done a good job at preserving that game, because there are so many other games, big and small, some first-party Sega games that have never been released ever again. I mean, Panzer Dragoon Saga is infamously like $4,000 fucking dollars, and like
Jet Set Radio Future is still not re-released, and that kind of bums me out too, because like, I mean, of course there was a point where Jet Set Radio fans on Twitter really annoyed me, but I was still kind of annoyed because they put the Jet Set Radio Future music in the new release. So I thought, it'll come eventually, but eventually never came.
Yeah. Unfortunate. But either way, like it's still good news, even though it's kind of, I mean, you implied it before, but, the Sonic fandom has a kind of tortured relationship with itself and its past and present. So especially with like some people like preferring only the classic games and some people having like a grudge against the classic games for like what they represent, and some people hating this current quote unquote meta era. And like I guess the thing is, I try to I have maybe a more nuanced opinion than not necessarily than other people have, because I'm sure a ton of people have very nuanced opinions about this, but I have a more nuanced opinion than what is the like group opinion on it, where like I think like, more Sonic continuing to be a force in the modern day is good, even though there have been so many fuck ups. And I don't think that like a series having a lot of fuck ups is cause for it to be considered garbage, to just wipe away the good it's done. I don't think that like Sonic, the same year that, Sonic released a game that people don't like, Forces, they released a game that people do like, Mania. And, I think Mania wasn't good because it was the classic Sonic. It was good because the people who made it were skilled level designers and knew like the exact game that they wanted to make. And they had a lot of the good ideas of the previous Sonic games to work off of. They didn't create this game from nothing and then we're like, oh, suddenly the fans are in charge now. A lot of those levels are levels from other games remixed. So they took the good designs and good lessons that they learned from those classic games and were like, what if we made an improved version of those? So I think that's, I don't necessarily think people like Mania only because it's a classic Sonic game. Or people shouldn't like it only because it's a classic Sonic game. And like, even as somebody who I have a very, I'm sorry to keep rambling on about this, but I guess this is why you got me on the podcast.
Yeah, please.
But I have like a very psychotic theory about Sonic, or I guess in my own mind, in that in my head, Sonic the Hedgehog is Dragon Ball. It's the Dragon Ball of video games.
You're right, and you should say it.
And like that extends the more that you can. It's such a generic thing to say, and it seems like it doesn't mean anything at first, but the more you try to apply it to different facets of itself, the more it makes sense. Yep. And I think that the best way to describe it is that, like, regardless of how you feel about all of Dragon Ball, in which specific parts of it, the manga ended with the fight with Majin Buu, and then it ended with Oob and Goku flying off to train. So whatever came afterwards, or in between in Super's case, that isn't part of that original vision. It's all other people picking up the pieces and telling their own story with it. And I think that with Sonic, that moment is Adventure 2. Yeah. And again, that's not saying it's the best game, because it's not. And it's not saying that it's like the only, like, no good games have come after, because that's not true at all. Yeah. But like, it is the end of the arc that was set from the beginning of Sonic 1 all the way to this point. It had its conclusion, and they were like, all right, it's over. And then the GameCube happened, and then it, that version sold a shit ton, so they had to make another game and kind of quickly retcon a ton of stuff and bring Shadow back and do all this Eggman's evil again and all this other stuff. Like, again, not necessarily bad, but that is, regardless of how you feel about Sonic Heroes, it is like picking up the pieces of an already completed thing and taking it forward. Now, not only is it like Dragon Ball structurally, but it's also fan base wise, they are very similar, where you have, like, a lot of elitism coming from multiple sides of the fan base who prefer one version of it over another. Yeah. And some people who say, like, some versions of it are less valid than others. And, like, all of those parallels can be drawn. But I think, like
not to cut you off, but just thinking about it, like, people referring the 4Kids cast versus people who like the Funimation soundtrack, the Falconer soundtrack, the parallels. But continue.
But to end it, in this rant, I will say that, to me, the biggest, most important connection between the two, and why Sonic is so important to me in the same way that Dragon Ball is that they both tap into the same tone. They both have a silly cartoon veneer. They give you this, like, bright and colorful world and all of these characters and adventures with a very lighthearted tone. But when they gears up, things can get serious. Things can get dangerous and, emotional and cool when it wants to be. And it can pull it off with aplomb while also having a wink and a nod towards the fact that it is a little bit silly. Yeah. I think that that's, like, people kind of growing up with Dragon Ball, for example, treat it as, like, the ultimate, most badass thing in the world. But there's a lot of silliness even towards Z, which a ton of people think is the more serious part. Yeah. Like, Majin Buu is the final bad guy. He's a very silly villain. Even when he, after absorbing, and becomes his final, or I guess pseudo final form, whatever. Like, when he becomes, like, a boring ass Cell type character with his, like, absorbing Gohan and Gotenks, and is the super most powerfulest man in the world. Even then, there's still silliness when Gogeta or Vegito shows up. Like, they still have a dumb fight. He turns him into toffee, and then he starts, like, beating him up as a piece of toffee. Like, silly stuff like that happens. And, like, it's the same thing as, like, you can have Sonic Adventure, and you can have, like, Sonic is, like, I just want to have a snooze, and, whatever, like, being a silly guy like that. And then, like, Tails, like, oh man, crashing the ship, like, all these goofy things. And Amy is like, oh, I gotta protect this little, this guy from the freaking robot that's chasing him. Yeah. And, but then you have, like, like deep introspection into like what it means to be like a living creature with Gamma.
Yeah.
And you have like the like horrible tragedy that is Chaos. You have like the epic finale of Sonic being like, we can't defeat the creature and just seal him away. We have to heal his heart. We have to like, you know, heal the wounds that were caused by all this. And that's the only way anything is ever going to get better. We can't just beat up Perfect Chaos and then hope things will get better. We need to like mend the wrongs that were done in the past by the Echidnas. So things like that, like it can have that, you know, it can be goofy. You can have big in the game as like with a fishing mini game, but then you can bring it to that emotional place. And like, again, I feel that same way with Dragon Ball, and I feel that same way with a ton of stuff that I love, one of which being OKKO, which is hugely inspired by Dragon Ball and Sonic.
Oh, yeah.
And one other thing that we will discuss later that was also hugely inspired by Sonic and Dragon Ball in a lot of ways. So, but I don't want to get ahead of myself there. Does all of that track for you?
Oh, yes. And I would love to, I would just love to like dissect. I guess like first off, and I know we ended up just going straight into the deeper conversation part and just like said like fuck it with like covering what was individual streams, so we can circle back to that. Now, speaking from my perspective, you first off, I will say that you definitely were able to word why someone of my age, I think we're on the same age anyway, but like someone of my age like feels a sort of attachment to these, you know, like 2000s era games.
Yes.
You know, like, and it's why I remember I had this opinion, but I presented it really poorly, so it's like the only deleted video I have on my channel.
Sure.
But I remember like comparing Sonic to Power Rangers, and no, this is not a segue to Toku, where that's long off. But to cut it short, I just found it interesting because I found like parallels between both eras of both franchises and the stories that they were saying. Like I knew what I was getting. Like there was still like kid stuff. You know, at the end of the day, you still had, you know, like likable protagonists and, you know, like issues that weren't really too complicated, characters that weren't super developed, but they were likable. And both of these stories not only took themselves seriously, but when you had stories that wanted to push the envelope, Power Rangers of RPM, and in stories, some are saying in more modern times, I guess that would be like Unleashed. But
Unleashed
some
is a good
also
one.
say that like the Black Knight's characterization of Sonic is also very good. But you know, it's never like grimdark or taking himself too seriously, which is why I was side-eyeing anyone who liked that Power / Rangers short.
Oh Jesus. You know? Well, yeah, here's the thing. Like I don't with that, like I don't know, like I don't necessarily think like Adi Shankar is like a bad director or a bad dude. I know he was like partially responsible for the Castlevania show, and that's a really good show, especially because Castlevania like fits really well with like a gritty, grimdark, bloody aesthetic like that. But like it's just, to me, like it's just the continued issue of like I know that it was tongue in cheek, so it wasn't meant to be serious, like for the creator. But unfortunately, I saw a lot of fans around the time that it was released that were like, "This is what Power Rangers should be." Yeah, in my opinion, that's just absurd because, you know, I think that we like the show for different reasons. I think that it being for kids is a huge part of its appeal. Because it has a different tone and a different set of expectations when it's that way. You know, like nobody is trying to compare Power Rangers to Breaking Bad. They fulfill different goals. You know, they like, I know Breaking Bad is the prototypical prestige TV show, but bear with me here. But like that's the, and I feel that way with, you know, you're right that, to go back to Sonic, that like, I think why people like Sonic and why people like Dragon Ball has nothing to do with like people don't like Dragon Ball for its badass action or it's like silly comedy at the beginning. People like it for both things existing at the same time.
Yeah.
I balk a lot in the same way as like Sonic fans who are like obsessed with this idea of purity to the classic series. That it was like, oh, it was more pure. It was just like fucking Bugs Bunny back then, you know? We didn't need all this plot shit when, you know, in my opinion, I love Sonic 3 and Knuckles because of the way that it is able to tell like an epic plot without having like too much words. You know, it's able to do it in a pantomime cartoon kind of style, but it's still able to tell like this mythic plot of like, you know, oh, this mystical island is raised in the sky, and then you have to go and explore it and learn the truth of what's happening. You find out that this prophecy that was seen as like these gods clashing turns out to be like this conflict between you, this embodiment of nature, and Eggman, the embodiment of machinery and, you know, and industry and things like that, clashing at the end. It has like it's a big satisfying epic game, and it dovetails perfectly into the following game, Sonic Adventure, which has like its big epic story. It doesn't feel unnatural at all to go from Sonic 3 and Knuckles to that. And like in the same way that like, yeah, if you went directly from, you know, fucking the Hunt for the Dragon Balls arc with Pilaf and all that, if you went straight from that to Frieza, yeah, it would feel weird. But like, you know, there was build up to it. You know, so
yeah.
And that's the same like with Dragon Ball, like there's a lot of people that are like, I like the Dragon Ball part more than the Z part. Like that's fucking stupid because there's a ton of good stuff in the Z part that you might enjoy. So, you know.
Yeah. But that's what See, that's the thing that I want to say, and hopefully I don't bore you to sleep when I like have the floor for a hot minute.
Sure, go ahead.
But that's what I also never got when the early to mid 2010s happened, and you saw a narrative shift about these older games and the fact that they had stories. No, just like, oh, the classics are similar because they didn't have story, but like they did. Either through the gameplay or especially in 3K with its cutscenes, you know, there was a story. And like the fact that people saw Colors as a return to form at like in 2010, I could understand why. But it's like, you know, it's just like the classics told the story of, you know, that's like the quote unquote Death Egg saga, if we want to like name the whole trilogy that. You know, it told that with merit. You know, like if you just want to take everything at completely face value, just go from level to level, you know, you can do that. But you absolutely can look into things, take a deeper dive. You know, like hell, the freaking mural in like Hidden Palace and Sonic 3 and Knuckles, when you actually see that, that's when everything starts clicking. That's something you could admire. So when you get into the 2000s, like I don't really think, like, first of all, I don't really think that like stories like that could be told in the same way. You know, you needed you know, cutscenes, needed voices, you know, because it was just kind of the expectation of the things at the time. Now, people can and should criticize these games and these stories, but at the same time, with people my age, even if I don't necessarily agree just because of the fact that I had a different approach to Sonic than most other people. I can understand where they're coming from. Like if they're able to see merit in something like Sonic 06 from a narrative perspective or even a gameplay perspective, I can understand why someone would say that, because it really does feel like, again, thanks to that narrative shift, it's just been popular to say that the games that I grew up with were shit. And that's the thing. I can take criticism. I'm willing to admit that not every Sonic game is a greatest of all time thing. But when people who are older than me seem to champion and almost meme to reality the idea that Sonic went off the deep end after 99 or even 97, and that only the games that released when I was a kid are all bad, but the games that came out when you were a kid, they're still good. I think that's what really irritates people, and the fact that Sega seemingly embrace that and marketing with it, the focus on classic Sonic at the expense of focus on modern Sonic, and then people talk about the flanderization of certain character aspects, just like a tone whiplash. And I still think that trying to circle back to it in Forces was just a source of ire for people because of the fact that you just tried to have your cake and eat it too. You want to carry out a story in this new tone, but you want to channel the quote unquote adventure vibe, but then you still want to cater to classic Sonic, who, according to stuff that I have hyperanalyzed over these last 4 years, he probably wasn't even meant to be in the game. And
no, not really at all.
Doesn't make sense, especially in hindsight. Mania is for the classic people. Let the adventure and boost kids have our game. And I think it really sucks because at the end of the day, I was really under the assumption that everyone was going to get what they wanted at the 25th anniversary. And I was equally excited for both Mania and Forces. I remember just coming home from college when I was able to, and just playing Mania. And I've never really been good at the classic games. I have beaten Mania. I haven't gotten on the Emeralds yet, but I have beaten Mania, and I enjoyed my time with it. But I really do think that over time, people praising Mania just because it wasn't like the games that I liked, and that everything that I liked and people that I liked around my age were bad. I think that's what really soured me, and just didn't make me just come to replay it. Instead, I wanted to try to just try to coast to see some of the games that I haven't been able to give my due. I'm in a weird position where it's I grew up with adventure, but only because it was really easy to download for free on YouTube back in the day. So that was my path. I just loved that, but that was the easiest PC Sonic game I could play. So I didn't play Adventure 2 until it came on Steam, and I wasn't as attached. Heroes, I had a box PC copy almost my whole life, but I never had a machine enough that could handle it. And then when I played that's a hilarious story. But even that, not to say that I think it's a bad game, but of course that's a discussion people can have. I just can't see the same merit that other people can. And I do think that maybe that is just that when you play this stuff as a kid, that's when you're able to really just
touch on,
technically just squeeze that rock and get a whole lot of water out of it. For me, I guess I'm more of a quote unquote dark age person. I remember having fun with Secret Rings. I remember really getting my fill with Rush and Rush Adventure in terms of like its gameplay. I think that Rush Adventure is the fairer game, and I even think the mini games are fun. But when you are as much of a tryhard as me, going through with Rush 1 on your second or third time, and you wanted to get faster and faster times, doing better, just that flair, that aesthetic is just great. And I do feel like there are elements of stuff. I don't think that there's going to be a perfect appeal Sonic game that will appeal to everybody. But I do think there are elements that people can um like mix and match in order to make something that really can do what Forces tried to do, at least more from a gameplay perspective. Just has something that can appeal to multiple people. Stories, I have no idea. I'll say that much. But I do think that the gameplay does have like some potential. And that'll be my final tangent before I go more into stories, because you've been a great listener.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying. I mean, I totally get the disdain for, maybe not disdain, but like the bitterness towards something like Mania for being like basically the figurehead of like opposition that these fans have towards like now this is how it should be. Whereas
we
like
can't coexist. It just needs to be like me all the time.
Yeah. Whereas like I'm glad that game exists because I love those classic games. But again, I don't think it's good because it's, just a classic game. I think it was just a well-designed, good game.
Yeah.
And two, like if they can, I think that they could easily do the same thing and with the adventure formula, or fuck it, even the boost formula, which people are sick of because of Forces. Like, I don't think any of those are like inherently like screwed to be bad. You just need to like design an experience around them that makes it satisfying. I think an issue that I personally have with, say, the stories of Colors and Generations and Forces, is that they're a little bit too slight in Colors and Generations to really justify how like simple the games are as an experience. They are fun, but they just feel like quick action fixes. They resemble the Dragon Ball movies in that sense, where it's like, oh, this is like the Cooler movie or the Broly movie or something like that, where it's like we're taking the elements of the series, plucking it out, making a simplified version of it, and then giving it to you. It doesn't exactly have the same emotional resonance as the other better parts beforehand that had like a lot more care put into them. Not to say that
Thank you.
The people,
that makes total sense.
Yeah, Continue. Not to say that the people making these modern games are like just fucking off. Like, I don't think Takashi Iizuka's the Satan or whatever, but like, it's similar to like Yamamoru Tadayoshi currently with Dragon Ball, where it is, like, it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. If that's like my biggest problem with like Super in general, is that like Dragon Ball was always going somewhere, no matter what. Like, it was elevating and escalating, and I understand that there's not much more you can elevate and escalate, and they have been doing that literally with Super, but like it feels like the characters are exactly in the same spot by the end of every single
quo reset.
Yeah, by the end of every single one of those arcs, it feels so like, it's not like, oh wow, after the Frieza arc ends and the Cell arc begins, like it's like one doesn't even end. It's just like, oh, they beat Frieza, and then the next arc begins with Frieza showing back up as a robot, and then Trunks kills him, and it's like, yo, dude, that guy was a pussy compared to these fucking robots that are about to come. And then by the end of that arc, Goku's fucking dead, and then like Gohan is the protagonist, and we have like a huge time skip after that. So like, and you can keep tracking back and like just see like, wow, every single, because it's a serialized thing and it was under like one singular vision, every single thing led into another one, and it felt like it was just naturally like progressing, and whether or not it got better or worse as it went on, it felt like one coherent narrative, whereas everything else that was, like I said, the people picking up the pieces, Heroes isn't a terrible game, but it feels like, Fusion Reborn or something like that. It feels like, oh, it's a cool, flashy thing to show people and be like, isn't this Sonic? Like, yeah, that is Sonic, but like, what about all that we lost along the way? What about the emotional, cathartic end to Shadow? You're just going to bring him back? And what about, like, can't we go somewhere else? Like, haven't we kind of ran our course with this kind of story? Maybe if they actually did do something interesting with Metal Sonic and all of that in that game, it would have felt like a progression from Adventure 2, but it just feels like a post-series movie.
Right. And your Dragon Ball movie comparisons just really come home to me, because like I sadly wasn't fortunate enough to grow up with the VHSs for the movies. I was old enough to have memories of watching the original like DBZ Falconer dub on Toonami, but I didn't really get back into Dragon Ball until it was made more accessible, and I saw Kai on Nicktoons and later Toonami again. But I remember like during the Toonami, in Nicktoons, they were showing Dragon Ball movies, which I hadn't seen in such a long time. And I remember seeing Broly, Legendary Super Saiyan, for basically the first time. And like, I enjoyed it as a movie, but it felt like it like, if I want to watch something cool and turn my brain off for Dragon Ball, then yeah, I can do that. But, like, while I'm having fun, I still felt like, it's kind of like nothing of merit story-wise really happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really long. That's like one of the longest movies, especially the original run, because the current movies are more like normal length, but those ones were like half-length movies, except for the Broly one. That one was 80 minutes long, and like 40 minutes of it are spent with Broly just kicking the Christ out of everybody in the movie, which is like funny for a few minutes, and then you're like, all right, Jesus Christ, guys, can we wrap this up? Like that's the thing. Like, if you really are
looking at your watch,
if you really are just like into anime hype fight shit, cool. I'm sure you love those movies. I'm sure you're like, fuck yeah, Super Saiyan 3 and the Fusion Reborn is epic. Gogeta, blah, blah, blah. But like, to me, there is the handcrafted quality of every fight in the manga cannot be surpassed by any of the movies, because they just feel like the fighting is just there to look cool. Whereas like, I can think of exact panels. Now that may be because of my obsession over Dragon Ball, but I can think of exact panels I can think of like, oh man, remember when like Nappa like kicks really fast and then Goku's like dodging out of the way? I can think of that panel, and then him like standing on top of his head, and then Nappa tries to like clap him with his hands, but he jumps out of the way just in time and punches him in the stomach. All that stuff, it's just like seared into my brain, because it's so like, the person making it is so well tuned into that, in the same way that like I can remember every moment of fucking lava. What the hell is that? Hold on, I forgot the name of the zone.
Lava Reef Zone?
Yes, Lava Reef Zone.
Yeah.
I guess I can't remember its name, but but I can remember all the moments of that zone. I can remember all of, even like the fucking pyramid areas in the Adventure 2, or like the all of the egg carrier stuff in Adventure 1. I can remember those, and I can remember set pieces and moments in those levels. I can remember cutscenes and moments in those games. I could not fucking tell you a single cutscene from the middle of Colors at all. If I tried my hardest, I could not tell you what a level looked like in Colors if I tried my hardest. And that being said, I mean, I'll play the new one that is being released because, hey, it's cool to get a Wii game that hasn't been re-released. It's in HD. It's in 60 FPS.
And there might be quality of life improvements too.
Exactly. And there's the hint towards Tails being a playable character. I like Tails. I would want to play as him. But it's the issue of, I feel like that's kind of one of the many issues with Sonic. There's no one single, do this and you solve the problem with Sonic. Unfortunately, I think it needs a full, if there's any one general thing that needs to be done, it's they need to labor a lot of effort into it. That's, which is very generic of a thing to say, but the problems are the lack of a singular vision, the lack of knowing who the audience is. Are you trying to appeal to the kids? Are you trying to appeal to adult fans? Are you trying to appeal to the haters? Who are you trying to target? Shouldn't you just try to pick one person and then go in all the way on that one person and hope that the blast radius of that target demographic is wide enough so that more people funnel in naturally? I think that that's something that the original Sonic games did, the first 6 or 7 ones. I think that's something that, Power Rangers does. I think that that's, every time I cringe whenever I see fans constantly asking the creators, being like, when is it going to be like? When is it? Well, yeah, but that's good. But is the next season going to be badass and for adults? And they're like, no, it's going to be for kids. They're just, the thing, the solution there.
RPM, it's goofy. They had a behind the scenes episode. RPM's hilarious. Oh my god. Yeah. Continue.
But that's to me, those are kind of I'm only this passionate because I love Sonic so much, but I don't feel I don't feel like it's necessary to give up on the series just because I think it's been in a rut. I don't even think it's bad. I don't necessarily even think some of the quote unquote terrible games recently are that bad. I think that they're just this isn't what in the same way, I don't think Super is that bad, but I think that I was just is any of this necessary? Could we have tried something different? If you're going to continue the story, couldn't you have waited until you had a good idea or a better idea to continue it? Things like that. So, that's just kind of I know I had to bring up Dragon Ball because it and Sonic are inextricably linked in my mind as two things, because it's just, they kind of exist in this perfect balance of giving you the people that are liking the wistful cartooniness as well as the cool action and high stakes. You get the best of both worlds with them, and I think that that's the reason why those are so hugely influential, and why most, I would say, modern Western animation were people who grew up with those media properties and decide to pay it forward and make their own version of that similar type of story.
Right.
So,
honestly, I feel like I probably could talk about Sonic with you for all day. But for the sake of time, I'm realizing we have been ranting for almost an hour, and while I would love to continue, we do have more topics. But just for the sake of circling back to our original thing, do you mind if I do just a sort of lightning round of our stuff that was covered in Sonic Central, and you can give me a quick thoughts?
Sure. I mean, I think there's only one more thing that we haven't talked about, but we can do that.
So we did technically bring up Colors, the new Colors remaster. We did technically bring up the new game, which totally isn't called Sonic Rangers. It all comes together.
Oh shit! I suggested that it would be pretty funny if that was a Sentai type thing, because they kind of did that almost with Boom, but it was a calamitous failure.
Yeah,
unfortunately. But I think I don't know. I guess I'm interested based on the name, but I can't really get too excited off of 15 seconds of Sonic running in a forest and some squares forming around him.
And I'm sorry. It's just so they already showed us half of that in some anniversary promo that they did, and you're still gonna get people saying be patient, have faith, and just if that's all you had, then just don't show anything, and then just maybe just have a bigger trailer with some gameplay. Yep. I don't think that's quote unquote entitled, you know what I mean? But yeah, Twitter.
Yeah.
So I think the only standout things that we hadn't talked about, Sonic Prime is coming in 2022. I don't know what to expect. I think they are talking about murmurs of a quote unquote multiverse, but they don't have anything to show for it. But I feel personally Man of Action can still do good stuff. So I'm optimistic, but still cautiously optimistic. But I think we'll be good. I think after Boom, we really are due for something that takes itself more seriously in a Sonic cartoon.
How are you? How do you feel about the Mega Man cartoon they made?
Now, I am always a devil's advocate for basically a lot of cartoons. It feels even if I don't hate it as much as everyone else does, that still sticks out. I haven't seen much of it, and of course, I am not. I can only have one blue guy rob my brain cells. So sadly, I am not nearly as familiar with Mega Man as a franchise. I do know of him, of course, but I can say I do feel there's probably some merit there, and it's not the people who were working on there on the show are just a bunch of people who just don't care about the franchise. I think they had that classic Guts Man's ass meme in one of the episodes. That's a deep cut. I'm sorry. You have to do at least some of your homework in order to reference that. I would love to check it out, but I think just like Sonic Boom, Mega Man Fully Charged got the CN Def Slot 1-2 combo. So we'll be able to see a lot.
Yeah. And it they unfortunately canceled it after its first season, and it ended on a cliffhanger and everything. It's unfortunate all around. I wasn't a huge fan after the first 13 episodes I think I watched. Excuse me. I'm a pretty big fan of Mega Man as well. So, but I didn't get too angry about it because it, sometimes, I said before, that the great thing about kids shows is that they can have a wide blast radius and then appeal to a lot of people based on the uncomplicated simplicity of enjoying them. Right.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do have to kind of just be this isn't for me, with certain shows, and that's fine. I don't think that means oh no, I suddenly don't like these kind of shows anymore. It's just oh, well, this one isn't for me because it's made for kids who like Mega Man and Smash Brothers, and maybe know of Mega Man from their parents. But as somebody who grew up playing all of the games, it's just not exactly what I want from Mega Man. I think that it's a in the same way that Sonic is, it's inextricably Japanese, despite how Western forward it is.
Yes.
And I think that removing, especially the tokusatsu elements from Mega Man and making it more like a Spider-Man type show,
right?
Where he's like a teenager in high school and, you know, I got to keep my secret identity and all that, kind of like diminishes the like specific sorrow and bittersweetness that I like from the Mega Man series.
Right.
So in the same way that the original Kamen Rider is a very bittersweet show.
Now, other than that, in terms of Sonic announcements, there isn't much. I know Sonic is making cameos in games like 2 Point Hospital, which is a sort of spiritual successor to Theme Hospital. And he is, he's an outfit for the people in the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. And Sonic games are going to be coming to the Epic Games Store, PlayStation Now, Amazon Luna. Kind of miffed about Colors, not gonna lie, because it is very obvious that Colors was set to go on Steam. In fact, it was on the website for a bit, but then they just changed it to Epic Game Store. So it is what it is with that. I don't know if you have any strong opinions about the Epic Game Store.
Not personally. I don't really have any.
Yeah.
I don't have any ire towards the Epic Game Store. It's kind of just like, you know, it's slightly more of a pain in the ass to use than Steam. I mean, it pays people better than Steam, but it is kind of a weird thing where, you know, it's because it has to like make up the ground lost by Steam. It has to be like extra aggressive with cornering the market. I still don't think that it's like. I still think Steam's far worse about that because it's just like the de facto monopoly fucking games distribution service. But I understand, you know, the people that have like a bitterness towards Epic Game Store. I don't necessarily understand people that are like, what the fuck? I was going to buy this game, but it's only an Epic Game Store. Because in my opinion, it's like, well, you know, even if you don't like the store... If you want to play the game, you know, it's not that much harder to like get it from the Epic Game Store, but yeah, this is a discussion that maybe I'm not prepared to have in full length, especially since, you know, I don't want to make this podcast like 3 hours long. Maybe
yeah, that's completely understandable. Even though I do enjoy talking to you, of course.
Yeah. It's just that secret. Shh, I have a podcast that I have to record later tonight. So, you know,
wink, wink.
Yeah.
And yeah, the only other thing according to this article is Sonic mobile game events, but that's whatever. I don't really keep up with them. Do you keep up with them?
No, not at all.
Okay. All right. So, we can finally move forward. Now, I remember making that frog pun earlier. And let me just say, let me just finally go into it. Amphibia is probably one of my favorite cartoons in recent memory. It's definitely one of my favorite Disney cartoons. And I know people who follow me on Twitter will go, but Cash, I thought you were one of 5 weirdos in the cartoon community who doesn't shut up about the fact that you find Ida hot. Yes, but I'm a man of different opinions, and the Owl House is, of course, a very solid show in general.
Absolutely,
no hate to that. Like but let me explain it like this. I have a Owl House pin on my backpack, but I have an Amphibious shirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And oh man, just now, to explain like my history of the show briefly. I remember both shows were announced at around the same time at a similar premise, teen girl fantasy world. So I was definitely wondering how something like that would go. And for a bit, I was more interested in the Owl House. But when I really took the time to actually watch Amphibia on my own accord because they did that wonderful thing. Even as someone who still has and watches Disney XD, I still didn't like the fact that they did the whole binge thing. Then they barely ran the show after. So I basically need Disney Plus to catch up on it. But when I did, it just sank its hooks into me really deep, and that finale. And it was funny because I had every intent to try to do a review, but then I finished season 1 almost a couple days before season 2 hit. So it was whatever, I might as well just keep watching.
Yeah.
And I'm glad for that. I know a lot of people ended up not giving the show proper dues because I think Owl House was able to constantly show what it was capable of, but Amphibia was more like a slow burn. And I like that because with Amphibia, because of the fact that I was able to get attached to these characters and their interactions. That's something that I find interesting with some shows' approaches when they go from more comedic to more dramatic and have more suspenseful events. If there's still a spirit of that show in its DNA, then I'm all fine. I just got burned off from that approach due to how Star Versus wasn't able to quite land the mark. But again, different topic, different day, different discussion. Now to finally give something to give you a hand, Nor, to chime in on the recent season 2 finale, and just the build up to it. It was insane. I must confess, I think the finale was great. I virtually have no complaints. I just want to rock it off thoughts with somebody, but I will admit I have sinned. I ended up checking out the episode early, but I was also a good boy and didn't spoil it for anyone who didn't. Yes. And even still, when I saw the live broadcast, we had that season 3 opening, and oh my God, we're just going to be speculating that for a month. But yes, let me know what your thoughts are on the show and specifically the finale.
Okay, so Amphibia is a show I had my eyes immediately glued to the second it was announced, literally the second it was announced, because, I've been a fan of Disney media, the things they create, my whole life. I'm a huge fan of the Disney animated films, and especially from all eras. I really love the 60s era, most specifically the one that most people don't like. So 101 Dalmatians and Sword in the Stone and Aristocats, things like that. The ones with a little bit of racism in them. I think that Winnie the Pooh Xerox style looks gorgeous. I think it's excellent. It feels very physical as opposed to kind of now where it feels a little bit homogenized in a way. But either way, I was a big fan, and like a lot of people, a huge fan of Gravity Falls when it came out, and was very into that. Post it basically Gravity Falls really hit its peak in 2014 to 2016. It was right as I was transitioning from childhood to adulthood. And getting very invested in that. So obviously anything that had the stink of Gravity Falls on it, I was immediately interested in. So DuckTales very much was all in on that. Because I also did enjoy the 80s DuckTales show. This new one's way fucking better, but whatever. But Amphibian and Owl House were both announced at the same time, and I believe they both had images too to go along with their announcements, and I just immediately latched onto the tone of Amphibia a lot more, and I implied it many times in the podcast already, but this is exactly a show that is following the same kind of tonal language that Sonic and Dragon Ball do, as well as something like its brother OKKO. And like Owl House, it's not, it doesn't fail to do that, but it is going for a different approach. It definitely feels more leaning towards like, I was a fan of anime and like that specific culture. It feels like, I'll say that Amphibia definitely feels like it was made by a guy who grew up with this stuff. And then Owl House feels like it was made by a lady who grew up with this stuff. They have slightly different tastes that come through and approaches to it. And I would say that the big thing to me that separates Amphibia and Owl House and makes me prefer Amphibia is that while I think Owl House covers a decent amount of ground plot-wise in its first season, it's pretty lackluster character-wise in its first season.
Yes.
I think that
I felt the same way.
Luz isn't too deep of a character. Amity is probably the standout like character development overall.
Right.
And then like Ida is hilarious and amazing, and she's a good MILF, but whatever. But like, King gets a few moments, but then like, I feel like Willow and Gus, the main friends, are like pretty left out on the cold. Especially
they have like a lot of potential, but they don't really get developed.
Yeah. In the first season anyway, I think that they do have a lot of potential. I just in general kind of like balk at the like the dorky black kid sidekick character and things, and not because I'm not like revealing haha I'm racist to you. no that is not happening. What I mean is that like I think after Craig of the Creek I'm like, oh, why the fuck can't this character be the main character? Why do they always have to be like the sidekick? So it's to me, like, I think it's great that we have a show like Craig of the Creek, and that show is like, primo, like, personally, my favorite show that is airing, like, right now, favorite cartoon, but I want more like that. Yeah. I want fucking more of it because it's infuriating, like, as much as I appreciate there being any amount of ethnic diversity in modern cartoons, it sucks that like there are still like these tropes that continue to exist in many different things, like Remy and Big City Greens or Bo and She-Ra. Like, it's just, I guess maybe Kipo is kind of the answer to that. Because it has like, multiple main characters, all black in some form or another. Yeah. And not, none of them are like just, I guess Benson kind of has a goofy sidekick character, but he's awesome. So screw you. Yeah.
Benson and Dave are my favorite duo, but yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Dave is so good. God. But Amphibia, I feel like covers a shit ton of ground character wise with just like hyper focusing on the Planter family as well as like the people that the Planter family affect. Like it really, that first season feels so interesting because it really is like Anne is like locked in one location and like literally in the basement, but more specifically in, all of Wartwood. And then like, she's this bratty, not necessarily materialistic, but selfish and pig-headed teenager who is thrown into this world that would do the most good to her to change her opinions and change her who she is as a person and make her grow, which is why I think that it was an excellent idea to have her be representative of like the heart of the trio of the three humans, because I like the idea of, Heart being the most willing to change, not the most kind from the outset, but like the person that is the most willing to like go through hell to become a different person to help other people, so I think that Anne goes through a lot and grows as a character. We learn a lot about her in the first season alone. So then when it's set up at the end of the first season that they're going to go out of Wartwood and go out of the valley and go explore and go to Newtopia, it doesn't feel like, intimately who she is, intimately who Sprig and Polly and Hop Pop are. How the world generally functions, like the caste system of this world, that frogs are at the bottom, toads are in the middle, newts are at the top.
Yeah.
That like, oh, so they're going to go to Newtopia, and like the Wartwood is like the shitty farmer town. And then the toad areas are like these big badass barbarian locations. And then Newtopia is this highfalutin fancy, like, technologically advanced city.
Yeah.
And like all of these little plot elements are like seeded into your brain and are making you more and more excited. The world feels so real. It feels so like well considered. And then like it ends up making a lot of the action and adventure far more satisfying because it feels so earned.
Right.
As opposed to like with the Owl House, where I feel like, again, like they move plot wise, but like the world doesn't feel terribly well developed beyond this. Generally, it's a fucked up demon world, and like the characters don't feel super well developed. It feels like they're in an interesting place at the end of the first season. And like, I'm sure the second season will take that and run, but it's not quite like Gravity Falls, where by the end of the first season, you are like, oh my God, what is going to happen? The Mystery Shack, like that's the, like, you're afraid for Dipper and Mabel and Stan and Seuss and all these characters because you've like grown to love these characters. Whereas like, Ida turning to a monster at the end of the first season after having a sick ass Dragon Ball Z fight with her sister, feels, it's like it's an oh shit moment, but not necessarily a like, oh my God, everything is going to be so different.
Right.
Like it feels like the rug was pulled up from under you. It's just like, oh shit, this plot point that they set up is finally being paid off. Yeah. As opposed to, the plot points like, yeah, like with the first season of Amphibia is the culmination of an entire season of plot points being built up, and including my personal favorite episode of Amphibia is a Hop Popular, which is about him, Hop Pop becoming or trying to become the mayor.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't really hear that being people's favorite, so I completely see why.
Yeah, it's insanely good. I love Hop Pop. He's my favorite character by far. And, not to disparage any other ones. They're all very good. But, like, I fucking love Hop Pop. And then the whole episode is about him making this, like, moral decision of, like, do I take the fall and let tyranny reign to support my family, or do I fight for what I believe, even if there's no material gain to it whatsoever, with his fight with the bear, and then him giving like that final blow to the mayor, and then losing anyway in the voting competition, and then all of the people in the town rewarded his gesture and gave him back a vegetable stand after like many episodes of losing one because he made some poor decisions. Yeah. Like that felt like that was a culmination of this story arc. And then that was the beginning of another one because that's culminated in the end of the first season where Grime is trying to assassinate Hop Pop for being too much of a rebellion leader. So I guess I'm spinning my wheels here, but I'm trying to really demonstrate like just what I think makes Amphibia not only like an underappreciated show. I think people don't look at it this way. They kind of look at it in the broad strokes.
Oh, yes.
And like what makes it like this kind of care is a fractal throughout the show and expands and is like gets to like mythic degree in the second season. By season 2B, I remember when the trailer for it dropped, I was like on the floor with joy because like it felt like this. They made a trailer that made it feel like this big epic fucking Zelda adventure where they're going to these different dungeons and there's going to be these different characters clashing with each other, you know, and like Sasha and Grime are going to be doing their thing. Marcy is doing her thing. Anne is doing her thing, you know, and like it's all going to culminate in this epic finale. And they were building this fucking finale up for like months. So when they fucked it up and they did not air it for the most absurd possible reason, it was
at the last possible minute.
Yep. It was just a huge kick in the nuts. Thankfully, 2 weeks later, it ended up airing and getting to see it. Holy shit. I don't
they
think
earned that primetime slot. I'll tell you that much.
Oh yeah. I guess I'll say this before opening up the discussion back to you, is that
yes,
I was extremely hyped for it, but I don't think I was hyped nearly enough for what I was given, because I think that it ended up delivering so much that like I didn't know what to do with myself, and I didn't know like, can they do this much in one episode of a show, 1 20-minute episode?
Yeah.
So, you know, I want to talk about how do you feel about that sweet second season finale, True Colors.
Oh my god, True Colors. I'm just at a loss for words for it, honestly. I remember legit just like tearing up like a little bitch for like multiple parts of it.
Yeah. I certainly did.
Just because of like, I feel like that's introduced like strongest suit, like the character dynamics, and you just saw all the culmination of that, and you saw like everyone is like all these types of relationships just like clashing. Like, of course, we have like Sasha, we see like stuff through her perspective, and let me just say, as much as I really like Sasha as a character, I think it was a genius thing for us not to see too much of her. But when we did see her, it made a huge hell of an impact. Like you thought of that like in the back of your mind. So like, you know, it's pretty easy to see like, oh yeah, times are going to change. So you kind of have an idea as to like how her character is going to be progressing, like what she is dealing with on the inside. And, you know, she made that apparent with, you know, like her allegiance, you know, being confused, like, because like obviously she she's like very supportive to Toads, but like her toxic traits like are manifesting in some bad things, and she's realizing that she can push people away, and she doesn't like that. But it's, again, you know, it's just, oh my god. So of course when Anne was like frustrated, especially like after like the third temple, you know, like it was completely justifiable. It wasn't just frustration, it was just like rage, because like, you know, again, like the first finale, you know, and again, that was also something that I did not think that they were gonna do. Even if Sasha was ultimately saying it, I was like, holy shit, they're actually doing that.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So
but not to throw another shot.
Oh sure.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh no, you go first.
Yeah, sorry. There was a bit of delay on your end, so I thought that there was an opening there. But
okay.
Yeah.
For the record, we just cut this all out, so it's no big deal. Yeah.
Don't worry, we won't remember to cut this out, so it will still be in the episode. but not. Yeah, but not to throw another shot at poor old Owl House, but I feel like Lilith showing so much really diminished her. Like she showed up like at a certain point, it was like every other fucking episode she showed up and had some like goofy like I'll get you next time, He-Man like thing with Ida trying to capture her. I'm just like, I don't understand the threat. Like, what's the imminent threat? Like,
what's the threat of playing basketball?
Yeah, like
whatever.
Like, what is the goal that like if the goal is simply like I need to capture you no matter what, then she should have gone all out right from the get-go. Whereas like, you know, again, Sasha's appearances are made purposefully sparse because she has her own thing going on and it's building up and you know what it's going to be and it's going to pop. But all of the episodes leading up to the finale are there to like make like twist the knife more and more and dig it in deeper and be like, this is going to suck even worse than you thought it was when she ends up like doing this big coup. And that, like, to me, like, I was fully just accepting the fact that the episode was going to be focused solely on this coup, and maybe have like a sort of cliffhanger that finally revealed that Andreas is evil, which absolutely zero people should have been surprised by. But you know,
yeah.
But I mean, he is voiced by Keith David. So that's
I was telling that to my friend Carrie, and I was like, you know, the second I recognized his voice, it was like there's no way that they would make Keith David voice someone and it would be like a hero. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just too like he has too like deep and sinister, but like kind of like okay, maybe like he's perfect for this kind of character.
Yeah, like he can do heartwarming, but then when you saw the extent of his character and like how devoted he was in just like being evil, I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah, and that like to me, like I was really surprised when I was watching it, and then the insurrection was stopped. And I was like, oh shit, how much is left of the episode? I'm like, we're only halfway through this episode. What the hell is going to happen? And then the second half of the episode is just everything just goes cattywampus, and like in the most beautiful possible way. Everything that I could have possibly wanted from this show basically happens. There's robots. There's like a big fight scene with all of the characters pitching in and doing something. I'm a huge fan of that, by the way. Like when shows are able to actually utilize their cast really well, especially if it's like a combat centric thing, you know, because I guess I have mental scars from Dragon Ball being such a fan of that, where like it always just devolves to one guy beating up the other guy. If I didn't say it before, my favorite arc of Dragon Ball is the Saiyan arc. I think it's so good because it utilizes the cast so well. Right. And like the final fight doesn't involve Goku. Like he gets fucking all of his bones shattered by Vegeta before the fight is over. And then it's like Gohan, Krillin, and Yajirobe that have to defeat Vegeta. And that's just such an awesome, like, oh my God, they're utilizing all of these characters, the ones that are still alive anyway, to like complete this goal. It's all completely pragmatic. It's not this weird honor bound, we must have a one-on-one duel. So I really love that. I love how like in the spirit of that, Polly has a huge heroic moment where she finally gets her legs and is able to like escape imminent doom. And, you know, she has her own tragic death where Frobo, who is an excellent character.
I love to robots making us cry.
Yes. That's another Dragon Ball connection. But I made people, you know, this is weeks out from when I made it, but I did make a video the second that True Colors finally came out. I edited together a video that was just the exact scene from when Gohan turned Super Saiyan 2. But I made it so that it was Frobo dying as Android 16. And then I made, of course, what I want to talk about right now is when I made just the Gohan going Super Saiyan 2, the equivalent in Amphibia, and that's Ant goes fucking Super Saiyan in this episode.
It's just Super Saiyan.
Yeah, like cannot stress enough. I'm sure many people listening to this have seen it, so they're not going to be like, what the fuck? Shocked by this, but it's awesome. And it just filled me with so much like pure joy that finally we got something that has clearly been influenced by something like Dragon Ball, and then it just calls a duck and is like, here you go, it's fucking Super Saiyan. It's not like even OKKO, which I love.
Yeah,
it tries to play coy with it and have TKO be like, but what if Super Saiyan was like, you were a moody teenager? And that's funny. Don't get me wrong. And I think they do great things with TKO later on, especially in the third season. Yeah. But like this being like, what if we just recreated she didn't, you know, I'm sure she was kind of sad about Frobo dying, but she doesn't have too much of a connection. It was Sprig presumably dying that caused this. So like, what if we just literally recreate like Krillin getting killed by Frieza, Goku going berserk, and then just laying the smack down, and do that with complete earnesty, and there's no like wink at the camera of like, I can't believe this is happening, or like, isn't this a little weird? She doesn't like she herself doesn't make any stupid jokes towards the camera. It's a scene that is played 100% fucking straight. And she just like lays the smackdown on fucking Andreas and like his army of evil Frobos that he has, which are sick, by the way.
Yeah,
I love the army of evil robots. It makes it I was like, oh yes, he has evil robots, which means there can be action in this next season, because usually the issue with there being a lot of action in these shows is that you can't have, like, in a kid's show, somebody beating the fuck out of another person.
Right.
But you can do that with robots.
Yeah,
that's
they don't have feelings.
Yeah, that goes all the way back to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So robots getting fucked up. But yeah, no, I was there are many points in the episode where I was like covering my mouth or like screaming out loud, which never happens. I'm usually very like stoic and reserved while watching it, but like Andreas pulling out the fucking lightsaber, the like fire sun sword, like literally made me scream out loud because I was like, what the fuck? That's so sick. And then the Anne turning Super Saiyan, because in my head I was like, okay, well, clearly the Calamity Box is going to give them some type of superpower at some point. You know, in the opening you see the prophecy of the three girls and they're facing off against this giant monster,
just like the mural in Hidden Palace.
Exactly. Very, very similar to that. So in my head I was like, okay, well, this will be like a finale thing, or maybe it will be like something where she gets the power but it's just like she just sends out a vague shockwave or uses magic or has like a sword or something. But no, she runs up on a motherfucker and punches him in the fucking face. Ooh,
that felt so goddamn good to see.
Yeah. And then like, you know, dodging out of the way exactly like with Nappa, and then, you know, dashing through the air and dodging all the lasers, and then just like slamming down them. Andreas has an AT field from Evangelion. It's like so many moments in that. This beautiful version of Anne's theme is playing in the background, just like, man. I feel like, God, here's the thing: the episode's so good that it feels like a shame that that most of the conversation is just about how goddamn good that like conclusive fight is, because it's really good. But like, I want to give a shout out to I love the Toad invasion part of the episode. I love the like beginning of Andreas revealing this evil plot. My favorite shot in the episode is, you know, the one where Anne has her head turned away and you can see like in the background, Andreas has his hand out and this like ghoulish stare and grin. It's very creepy and foreboding. And it's just such a beautiful shot. And
oh man,
you know, there's so many, like, they labored all this love into it. And I guess what I can say is it feels like an episode that's so cathartic for everybody making it, but especially Matt, because it feels like it's the culmination of all of everything of like, what if I took the Frog Simpsons and turned it into Dragon Ball? Like, and I'm just like, fuck yeah, that's exactly the type of thing that I want. I think people developing the thing that they've created and like getting more comfortable with it and making these broad strokes and making these like big gestures and being 100% into it. Like, there's just something so intoxicating about that. It feels so much like, yes, this person got to do exactly what they wanted to do.
Right.
And even if you get ones that kind of drop the ball on that, like Star Versus, there's stuff like Steven Universe, which really like stood out in people's minds as a show that began small scale and like light tonally, but then elevated to something else by the end.
Yes.
And like I guess the main difference here is that it's Steven Universe elevated to something else emotionally, whereas like Amphibia is able to like do that emotionally, but also like up the stakes in like an action and adventure-y kind of way. Right. Whereas like as great as Steven Universe is, it does just stay in one place the whole time. It's more about like the emotions of the characters evolving, but they're always in Beach City for the most part. When they go somewhere else, it's always a special occasion. Whereas this is like, the first season ends with them leaving Wartwood, and then they eventually do come back, but they are going out and doing these things. And then the fucking third season, they're not even in Amphibia. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. And I guess that's, the second I saw Marcy get impaled by the sword, I was like, oh, that's the reason it was delayed for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
There you go.
I almost thought it was going to be when Sprig got yeeted out the window, but like when that...
Yeah. Oof. Well, that's the thing is that I thought that first. I was like, no, that's not enough. That's not enough to like, it's kind of like, oh no, what's going to happen? But it's like, there's no way fucking Sprig is going to die.
Yeah.
But then, it didn't diminish from the impact, but like that happened to Marcy, and then us not getting any resolution on it and just like getting kicked out and like, what the fuck is just like, that's such a good, shocking moment. And I think people have said it, but I wouldn't be surprised if the reason that they showed the third season opening was not only to garner hype, but to show that Marcy is not quite dead.
Yeah.
As to like not piss off the evil, the cloying network executives atop their ivory tower. But I've been ranting a lot, but I think we agree for the most part on all of those things about me screaming and fanboying about the show. So
yes, for sure. Of course, like I want to respect your time and our topic's time, but like the only thing I wish we went into more detail with was just the fact that they had and this is gonna be a fucked up joke, I admit. But they had the gall to just introduce a character, have everyone fall in love with her, just like to the point when people were actually relating to her, and not only did they just make her a shish kebab at the end of it, but now just with the knowledge that like Marcy knew everything, like she like was the catalyst for everyone being in Amphibia, it changes everything. Like if we just like rewatch from to this point, that like the implications of everything just like are just seeing completely different light, and that's good writing. Like, oh my God,
absolutely. I think I wish I had the magic ability to get Matt Braley and talk to him. Maybe on one of my podcasts I'll do that, but
wink wink.
I just want to float the question to him very specifically, because I know for a fact after, like, not only from what he said, but just watching the show, even before this episode, that he was a fan of Dragon Ball. The Third Temple had, like, a very Dragon Ball moment of Sasha throwing her armor to the side and it, like, causing a crater, and then them being like, how much does this stuff weigh? Like, very much like Goku and Piccolo's weighted training clothes before the Raditz fight. Or, just like in general, the like gravity chambers that they would be in like the Frieza and Cell arc. Whereas the one question I want to ask, and I'm not, I would be very surprised if you would know what the hell I'm talking about. But I just want to posit this question.
Yes.
If Matt Braley, did you play Final Fantasy Tactics Advance at any point in your life? Because that game has like nearly the same setup and like character dynamics, and that the main character is somebody who's like not like who likes the fantasy. It's basically about 3 kids who get sent to a fantasy world. And the main character is somebody who like wants to get out of there. Is like, we got to get home. It doesn't hate his time there, but is like, okay, all of this stuff that we are doing is in the service of the goal to getting out of this fantasy world. Then there is one of the other friends is a girl who ends up like shacking up with this more warrior race and like finding her niche there and being like, I don't want to go, like, I just want to do shit here because I'm like cool and people like appreciate me more. And then the like your closest friend is somebody who like has like a drunken deadbeat dad and a dead mom. And all 3 of you end up in different locations and end up like becoming cohorts to different people. And he ends up in the lap of like the queen of that world. And she ends up looking exactly like his mom. So like he doesn't want to leave because he's like, no, I fucking hate the real world because my dad in the real world's like a drunken fuck up, but here he's like a badass warrior. My mom is still alive and she's the queen. And everybody bullied me back home and nobody respected me, but they respect me. I just want to stay here forever. And it's about the main character having to be like, no, look, this is just, you're just escaping from your actual problems. You will die here if we keep continuing to be here, and you'll never get to actually solve those issues that you have with your family. So that's a little bit of some spoilers for Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, but those who know, I love that game because I thought that story is super fascinating. I love the idea of a like other world story where the main character is like, I gotta get the fuck out of here, and my other friends do not want to get out of here, and I have to convince them in some way that it's for their own good to get out of here.
Right.
So Amphibia immediately, like once the second season started and that started to like become more clear that that's where the story was going, I like fell in love even more with the show because it's just like a mirror of my soul of like everything that I like want and value in fiction. So really, I mean, I could easily see by the end of the 3rd season, which is likely the final season, that Amphibia would be like my favorite show of the 2020s, at least at this point. I sincerely doubt, like, again, I don't hate Owl House. I don't even dislike it. I love that show. I think it's great, but I just don't think, for me personally, it's going to reach that level. For like, I could totally see it reaching that level for a lot of people, especially girls or people that grew up in a similar position as Luz did, and like maybe relates to Amity or things like that. But like where I like see myself in Anne, like that's how that show connects to me. I look at her and I'm like, God, another one for the books of like, this character reminds me too much of myself. So and like Marcy as well, like all 3 of those characters, and I think it's because all 3 of those characters are Matt, and Matt is very similar to us. He grew up with a lot of the same stuff as us. He grew up loving Sonic the Hedgehog and Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
So it's all connected, baby.
Oh, man. Now, man, it's nuts because like each topic we just like go into is literally just an episode.
Yeah.
This is a special for everyone listening. Oh my god.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if you want to split this up and split it into parts and release it over the course of a couple weeks or whatever, I would feel, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I'm fine to go for another half hour or so. So
okay. Now that is certainly an idea.
I do want to get to the question that we were given by somebody on Twitter, though, because I think that it pertains to this especially.
Okay. We got a question from sorry if I butcher this. Malcolm is here. Question for the pod. What country or people's culture would you like to see more in the medium of animation? Asking since Amphibia has a Thai pro tag because Matt saw the lack of Thai rap.
All right, do you want to go first, Adam?
Yeah. Sure. Now, like obviously I'm down for any like representation because the fact that I feel like any sort of new perspective just grants itself just so much story potential, and not just exclusively in telling a story directly about that experience, but it's like if a person puts that energy into the premise they're making, viewing it through that lens could help you respect it in a different light. It's why, of course, like I love OKKO and nerdiness, but the fact that I'm black, EJQ's black, I can relate to that in a different way. You know what I mean? Now, I would definitely want to say that, of course, bias, but like my own culture of Haiti is something that I would like to see represented in animation. And obviously, I'm not the only person who can or should talk about this, nor am I the best, because I wholly admit to growing up in America, and I don't have many cultural ties to Haiti, as I believe some of my peers. But I would still like to see that because I don't think a lot of people know a lot about Haiti to begin with. I know people just immediately associated with voodoo and in itself have very, very wrong and troubling connotations when it comes to it.
Absolutely.
But I want to show that someday, like I do feel like if I ever got in that position, like I would be kind of scared because it feels like I would have to make the perfect representation of my culture, which is definitely a lot of pressure to put on. I know there were actually some black people in some forum I saw long ago that didn't like OKKO because it didn't hammer in specifically on the black experience. But I do think people can create whatever they like. And I do want to take this time to not only reclaim some aspects of my culture, but hopefully incorporate into my stories. Now, I obviously do not want to, like, apologies in advance. I do not want to impose anything, say anything that may come across the wrong way. But when I look towards other cultures that have been represented, I would like to see I would just see like more varieties of cultures. I know, for instance, Jesse from Infinity Train Book 2 is said to be Native American, which I think is a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, Jesse rules.
Jesse's just such a likable character. Not like an artificial way, because he's still a well-rounded character, but it's just like if you don't like Jesse, like how fucking dare you? And I know some people like would wish to have like a more explicit like representation of that, but the fact that he does talk about some of his family's customs in just a casual way is just something that I can definitely also respect. Um, I am of course glad that book 4 also had some very prominent, very overt Asian representation.
Mhm.
I believe that we can really lead into that a lot because I feel like a lot of people are really exposed to a lot of stuff and they just put into one umbrella as quote
Yeah.
unquote Asian or sadly they most immediately associate Japan, because of the media that we do like and consume. And like and consume media is fine, but we do need to have some more exposure. I think We Bear Bears, and to somewhat of an extent, I remember Steven Universe addressing some of that. We Bear Bears is like overtly it has like Korean influence.
Korean.
Yes, because I know the creators of that heritage, and I think Lars is Filipino, and they stated some of that. But again, just like having more overt stuff and just like showing the light of perspectives, that like are in the like Asian diaspora would, I think, like just really be a breath of fresh air and like open people's eyes to know that, hey, there are other countries outside this whole monolith of Asia that we admittedly don't really understand because we don't really get to hear these perspectives a lot. But I've been rambling for a bit. I'd like to hear your perspective.
Well, first of all, I'll say some, I'll go off of a little bit of what you said in that one. I would personally really love a series or something that was about the religion of voodoo without it being stigmatized as like creepy witch doctor magic, as it usually is. That's like, as much as I like the movie Princess and the Frog, it kind of like goes into a lot of that as well. And it's this cartoonish version of voodoo. So like, I agree with you. I would absolutely love, just in general, like any kind of Caribbean culture, like focus on that. I think the issue that cowardly creators and execs have is that they would have to talk about slavery if they were talking about those cultures, and like these people, the execs in charge maybe don't necessarily want to remind people of that. I think suck it up. I would like to see, like what these port cities and things like that, if it's going to be a fantasy or something taking place in the past, talk about that, or like a contemporary story. I think that those are two different flavors. Like, I think Amphibia is really good and interesting in a way that it does with Thai culture, in that like the world of Amphibia isn't really specifically any kind of culture. It's just like a generic kind of fantasy. But Anne herself is from that, and then her two friends are also like in a similar like world perspective, but different. You have a Chinese girl, and I mean, it's not as specifically said if Sasha is Asian, but her voice actress is Japanese. So, there's the implication there that all three of them have Asian heritage. And I'll say that, like, for me, a thing that I would want is something that was about, ideally any number of Asian cultures would get the representation. But if you were going to do something from Japan, I'd love for it to not be about anime or fucking video games or anything like that. I would just I think that that's the problem, is that every time we tackle Japan, it's always like a kind of modern Japan, or like you have like the stereotype of the Japanese girl with like the streaks in her hair because she's like, fucking not with it. She's not, submissive. She's a bad bitch, all that, But like, I would love to see in the same style of like, other fairy tales tackled by something like Disney, like something about Momotaro, or something about, there was a actually Japanese movie about Princess Kaguya, but like other fairy tales from Japan or other cultural stories, like imagine a like, you know, a thoughtful series about Oda Nobunaga that wasn't like a ridiculous anime, but it was like, whoa, we're actually like focusing on this part of Japanese history and like how this one cultural event affected the whole country for 500 years, you know, things like that. That's not my answer, though. I was just going off of what you would say. What I would pick, or the two things that I'm the most picky about, are that I already talked about my disdain or my like balking at the like nerdy black best friend sidekick character. Not to say that nerdy black kids don't exist, because they certainly do. But that's true. But like, you know, doesn't it suck that like the only version of a black kid that appears is always a sidekick to some kid, some other person, and is always like a sanitized version of that character? Like, those characters should exist, but there should be way more. That's why, you know, I enjoy Craig of the Creek, because, you know, it talks about Craig and you have him and his family, and he doesn't necessarily fit into any of that kind of role. He's not like, he's nerdy, but he's not necessarily the like glasses wearing, you know, that specific kind of nerdy character. And he has like a family that are made up of all these different types of people. And then the whole world of the Creek has many different cultures and ethnicities in it. So it doesn't just stop at like, oh, we got one. Why did you guys want more? Like they give you more and more. So like, I think even if you focus on one specific culture, you should also include multiple other cultures if the story calls for it.
Right.
So, for example, like, I always get annoyed personally with the like dweeby Jewish characters. Like it's like actually like infuriating whenever I see like those types of characters. The like, you know, they always have like weird nebbishy allergies and like, you know, like I can't drink milk past 11 because blah blah blah, like, or they're like huge weenies, or just like comic relief. And it's just like, can't somebody be Jewish and be fucking cool for once, or like competent or normal, for Christ's sake? Why does it have to be a joke every single time?
Yeah. Well, I think we did get a bridge from SBD.
That's true. I mean, yeah,
but of course we need much more, of course.
Yeah. But like, I'm just thinking of like, not even a show that's, and I ain't saying the show is bad, but I like got annoyed with something like Summer Camp Island for having Oscar be a like Jewish coded character, and he's just such a pathetic dweeb. And it's just like, God damn it. Why does this keep happening? And like, you know, I don't know. Like, I think that should be the new Rugrats show. That's stricken from not at all. That doesn't count. But it looks terrible. But I don't know, that, and just in general, as like, not necessarily as pertaining to me personally, because I am a white guy, despite being, you know, having the Jewish heritage, but, you know, like that pertains to me. But this other suggestion is, I've always said that I would love, there are so many different, very interesting, very cool fairy tales and myths and culture around India. And that country has a ton of fascinating stuff in it. And a lot of it is coming from India itself. But like, there are a lot of Indian diaspora in America. So there's plenty of room for American-made Indians focused stories. And like, you know, it goes back to like Avatar, taking a ton of stuff from like Buddhism and Hinduism and having like one character that's maybe Indian, and he sounds like fucking Apu from The Simpsons. So like, you know, it's just like, I can't really think of that many things. And usually like, just like with East Asia, South Asia is kind of always gathered into this like singular thing. So like all brown people, all Middle Eastern and Indian and Southeast Asian, all those fucking people, like they get the one kind of banner representation. They get like a girl with a hijab in the background, and that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas like I would love to just have like straight up like a story about the culture, like the actual like modern culture, or like a fantastical fairy tale about like Ramayana or Ahsoka or things like that, or Hanuman, any of those stories, you know, those are the kind of things that I'd want. But in general, like in this whole conversation, you know, I think if you're making a story focused on a specific culture, all humans are connected in some way. I think that it only makes sense that other cultures can exist and coexist within a story that's focused on one specific culture. Now, if it's focused on like, you know, the Sengoku period of Japan or whatever, like obviously there will only be Japanese people there, but like, you know, but if it's in America and it's a show that's, you know, focused on a black family like Craig of the Creek, it's fine to have like all these other characters of different ethnicities show up, be side characters, be in the background, all of that stuff. So I just think in general, I agree with you that people should want this not because they're like, oh, they're the SJWs that just hate white people or fucking whatever. Menace. Yeah, it's because that they should want new stories. They should want new stories and perspectives that they haven't experienced, and should appreciate these new, fresh stories, because that's honestly like such a huge boon to a lot of things that maybe wouldn't be super interesting. Like the movie Moana, I think, is a great movie, but mostly because it's a fresh setting and a fresh fairy tale that they're tackling. It's not fucking Frozen or Tangled, which are both good movies, but like are well trodden ground as far as like aesthetics go.
Yeah, it's so like a safe bet.
Mm-hmm. So like a tropical Pacific Island setting is very refreshing to be in for a whole movie. You know, cultural mishaps aside, you know, with if they were like portraying it correctly, it's just from the ground up, you really cannot go wrong with like starting from like, I want to do this different thing. The second you start thinking about, I want to do like Game of Thrones, try something else first. You know, but
that's all. I'm sorry. Not to say anything you were saying was like funny, because I really was engrossed by your perspective. I just thought it was funny, and not only did you do a proto Kermit voice, but you did it after we rambled for 45 minutes about a frog show.
That's true. Those who know me know I'm a huge Muppet fan, so I'm big on the old Muppets, and I think Muppets are a huge part of Amphibia as well. I mean, not just because of the frog thing, but just in general, the way the characters are designed are very like, they're simple and like striking and memorable in the way that Muppets are. So
and perfectly marketable, you know.
Absolutely. And there's still no plushes or anything. So
a damn shame.
The only one that I have for Amphibia is an unofficial one by the Mystery Shack, which is Domino 2. So
ooh, perfect.
Yeah, that's a great one. I'm glad to finally see Domino, just normal Domino, in the third season of Amphibia. So
but yeah, assuming there's not any other like lightning round topics that you want to address, because like
I think that we got a good spread. I mean, you said you wanted to talk about Toku, but I think that we did throughout in many different ways. And if you ever want to do a follow-up episode where we just talk about fucking tokusatsu, I would be more than down. Maybe the issue is that I haven't been keeping up with Saber or Zenkaiger or Power Rangers for the past couple months, so I'm behind on all of them. So,
that's completely fine because I would be able to get more time to prep with the current stuff, and we could talk about some of the more recent events, hint, in more detail.
I think 2 hours is a good place to wrap up this podcast. We gave you a lot. I rambled a lot, but hopefully there was a lot built up inside with the Sonics discussion, especially. Ooh, and I have been trying my hardest to try to get together and make a video about Sonic, not about like a show or something, but just like my personal feelings about Sonic. And in some of that I just expressed in the beginning of this podcast.
Yes.
So there you go.
For sure. You have been a great guest, and we will definitely link up in the future. I think we have enough topics where we literally just could have a follow-up about the same length. But yeah, I have been Cash, and this has been another episode of Cash Cast. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Absolutely. You can find me on twitter.com/WazRanger, WAZP Ranger. I post about cartoons and video games, anime, everything under the sun that I'm interested in. You can get a good sampler platter of stuff. A lot of times I'm just retweeting, but sometimes I'm posting angry opinions about video games or whatever. I also have a video channel called It's Only Magic. I make video essays about cartoons I enjoy. They're not necessarily reviews, but they're not necessarily hyper focused on one specific topic. It's just generally picking a grab bag of cartoons I enjoy and talking about why I like them. I have, at the time of recording, I just finished a video about Camp Lazlo, which quickly became one of my favorite shows from Cartoon Network ever. After rewatching it, it's very good, and I recommend watching that video if you want to kind of see the sort of passionate manic mind that would come to that decision. And I have a follow-up video on the oft-hated My Gym Partner's a Monkey, which I watched first and became very invested in because it's such a fascinating, weird show. It's not quite as good as Camp Lazlo, and I talk about that in this eventual video that will be out. But I think that it's far, far more interesting than people ever give it credit for. I went out and asked some questions. I did an interview with the creators of the show, which I contacted on Instagram. And then, we corresponded afterwards. Because there are no interviews, no production info, nothing about the show online. It's just a ghost of a show. So I was I need to talk to the people who made the show to get some answers. Well, I did that. It's going to be a good one. I promise you will be maybe this show is worth watching. Unfortunately, you can only watch them on Boomerang at this point. So if you fucking have Boomerang, then... go ahead and watch it. But, hopefully they'll be on HBO Max soon. But that's what I'm up to. I also, and this is maybe a bit of a spoiler, but I secretly made a no context account for My Gym Partner's a Monkey that I referenced in the script. And then I was fuck, I have to make this thing. So I made that 2 months ago just to show you how long it's taken me to make these fucking videos. And I barely post on it anymore, but I will this week, because tomorrow I have a day off. I will start again. I'll queue up a whole bunch of clips and really fill that sucker up as I'm gearing up for that My Gym Partner's a Monkey video.
Yes.
And yeah.
Okay.
That's all I got going on. Oh, you know what?
Yeah,
I forgot because usually I'm plugging myself on a podcast, so I don't need to plug the podcast I'm on. But also, go check out my podcast, Discuss All Monsters. There's a Patreon if you want to donate to that. Discuss All Monsters. It's a chronological exploration of every single Toho monster movie in order. We are halfway, a little more than halfway through the Showa era, and we are getting into some good shit. We just did Latitude Zero, which is a fucking bizarre and insane movie. We did that with Manovsky Article, a friend of ours. And we have upcoming episodes about Destroy All Monsters, which is an excellent movie. That's a huge crescendo of all the Godzilla stuff. And we have an upcoming one on Godzilla vs. Hedorah, which has a very special guest. If you're a fan of the cartoon OKKO, like I am, you might want to sit in and listen to that episode. All right, that's all. I am done now.
Okay. Now, all I will say before I go is that I am a fan of what should I call you, Wyatt or Wasp?
Wyatt, it's all good. You know me.
Okay. I am definitely a huge fan of Wyatt's videos. If I can make any personal recommendations, I would definitely suggest his Megas XLR video and his Tiny Toons video and his Angry Video Game Nerd and Board Games videos. I think those are all some of his best stuff.
Those are good. I know I've made a good video, and this is a very bad barometer, but I know I'm like, oh yeah, this is a wide net, is when other inspiration Pan Pizza likes one of my videos or comments on it. I'm like, oh yeah, made a good one. He liked the Megas one, and he liked the two James ones. So boom. Nice. That was like honey. That was like a fly paper, my honey trap for him. So
I'm gonna get Pizza Man on my videos one of these days. It's why I related so much to your process, because coming up next on Cash on my YouTube channel is eventually going to be my review of Magical Friendship Squad, the show that people spent more time arguing about than actually watching. Mm-hmm. It is not perfect, but I love it. When I have a lot of guests, I actually did get an anonymous crew member to clear up some information about the show.
Awesome.
I ended up making a whole custom scrolling background in After Effects. That's why my Twitter header is like this. So people, I'm just saying, because I remember Pan was one of the last people who talked about it, and he has an actual platform we're giving a shit about. So that's a merit. But even still, I felt like this is something that I have to do justice, no matter how long it takes. So I completely understand and respect your devotion to Gym Partner, and I wish you best of luck.
That video will be great when you see it. The Camp Lazlo one as well. Think of them as a two-parter. You need to watch both of them. The Spider Monkey duology.
Yes.
I'm very proud of those videos. So hopefully the Lazlo one will be up the week that I'm recording this. I'm not sure when this is going out, but hopefully it will be this week, the beginning of June. And then the My Gym Partner's a Monkey one should be sometimes towards the end of June. So there you go.
And we are finally done. So I have been Cash.
And I have been Wasp Ranger.
And this has been another long-awaited episode of the Cash Cast. Make sure to follow on whatever preferred the podcasting platform that we have. We are on Anchor, but you can also find us on Spotify, whatever you can listen to a podcast on. We have an official Twitter account now and a official WordPress site. Big things are going on. But yes,
thank you.
You have been a great guest. And to anyone listening or watching, Take care, stay safe, wear a mask, and love and peace always.
Peace out. Mwah.